we return our full attention to the cranium, the comprehensive bony structure of the head. This immense piece of the silent architecture is fundamentally divided into two major components based on the structures they encompass. The section designed to encircle and protect the delicate tissue of the brain is the neurocranium, while the portion surrounding the nasal and oral cavities is the viscerocranium, the facial skeleton. The cranium itself represents the total bony mass of the skull, excluding only the highly mobile mandibula, the lower jawbone. Within the neurocranium, we focus on its superior division, the calvaria, often simply referred to as the skull cap. The calvaria forms the overarching roof, the lateral expanses, and the posterior limits of the skull, establishing the region of the forehead. This structure functions as the body's natural helmet, nature's helmet, an impenetrable fortress, designed to house and shield the brain. The bone tissue here, like most cranial bones, is classified as flat bone, thin, flattened, and generally curved. The density and strength of this shield derive from a principle of geometry, because the superior aspect is deeply curved. The cranium is inherently self-bracing. This structural elegance permits the bones to be relatively thin, yet remarkably strong for their weight, much like the quiet, efficient design of an eggshell. The 8 large bones that primarily compose the cranium, including the frontal bone, the os frontale, the paired parietal bones, the os parietale, the occipital bone, the os occipitale, the paired temporal bones, the os temporale, the sphenoid bone, the os sphenoidale, and the ethmoid bone, the os ethmoidal. Together form this unified protective shell. The alabaster-hued flat bones of the cranial vault are not uniform in their structure. They are marvels of layered engineering, optimized for shock absorption. Each of these bones consists of a 3-layered matrix. The external and internal surfaces are composed of layers of compact bone, the substantia compacta. This dense outer bone is hard, rich in inorganic salts, and contributes to the overall external shape and strength of the cranium. Sandwiched precisely between these two hard, external layers of compact bone resides the specialized internal padding, the substantia spongiosa, spongy bone, in the skull. This inner layer of spongy bone is specifically termed the Diploe. The structure of the Diploe is critical to the function of nature's helmet. It is a heavy layer of bone matrix that acts as a profound internal buffer. The matrix itself gains its rock-like hardness from inorganic calcium salts, which provide the ability to resist compressive forces. The Diploe is the key component in maintaining the internal tranquility during impact. Should the skull experience a moderate external blow, the force may be sufficient to fracture the outermost layer of compact bone. However, the internal Diploe layer is designed to immediately absorb the impact of the shock wave. This crucial shock dampening function means the impact is often neutralized before the energy can reach and harm the inner layer of compact bone. This resilient matrix of spongy bone prevents damage from being transferred directly to the delicate brain tissue contained within the cranial cavity, beneath the overarching calvaria. The inferior part of the neurocranium forms the cranial base, the basis cranii. This internal floor is highly complex, divided by prominent bony ridges into 3 distinct, descending levels, often visualized as foundational steps or basins. These basins are the anterior cranial fossa, the middle cranial fossa, and the posterior cranial fossa. The brain tissue rests snugly within these contoured spaces, securely enclosed by the overall structure of the calvaria. The specific bones that contribute to the formation of this complex floor and dome, the frontal bone, the sphenoid bone, and the ethmoid bone, all contribute to the most anterior and shallowest basin, the anterior cranial fossa. The middle fossa is contoured by the sphenoid and temporal bones. The deepest and most posterior section of this bony floor is secured by the occipital bone. Thus, the skull achieves its protective capacity through a dual mechanism: the broad, self-bracing curve of the porcelain-like exterior, reinforced internally by the heavy, shock-absorbing Diploe matrix. This layered nature's helmet is the ultimate expression of the silent architecture's commitment to internal protection and stability. Our careful descent from the overarching dome guides us now to the single bone that defines the anterior, upward curving expanse of the forehead. This is the frontal bone, the os frontale, classified structurally as a flat bone. Its specific function requires a powerful, sweeping curve. It forms the entire skeleton of the forehead region, reaching superiorly to meet the parietal walls, a foundational element of the cranial fortress. Imagine this alabaster sheet now, a wide, smooth plate arching across the facial landscape. This heavy, dense bone must absorb and distribute forces directed at the face, ensuring the tranquility of the delicate structures that lie immediately beneath. It is crucial not only for the external shield, but also for the internal structure. It forms the anterior wall and nearly 1/3 of the roof of the entire cranial cavity. Tracing the bone inward, we find that it curves sharply to form nearly the entire roof of the orbits, the sockets where the eyes rest in darkness, deep beneath where the eyebrows reside. The frontal bone presents a horizontally aligned, supportive ridge, the supraorbital margin. This margin forms the most superior boundary of the bony orbit, a protective shelf just above this prominent brow region. The bone displays a small but essential structural opening, the supraorbital foramen, or, in some, merely a notch. This opening is not arbitrary. It serves as a carefully protected passageway. Through this tunnel pass the nerves and vessels, vital lifelines that silently supply the overlying forehead. A prime example of the silent architecture providing sheltered transit for the body's necessary flows. In the precise center of the forehead, just above the root of the nose, lies a subtle surface, the glabella. The name emphasizes the unadorned, smooth nature of this section. This surface flows seamlessly into the superior curvature, defining the forward arc of the cranial fortress. Deep within the dense matrix of the frontal bone itself are hidden, air-filled hollows, the frontal sinuses, silent air caves, quiet extensions of the nasal cavity. Visualize these cavities now, protected by the thick, heavy bone that surrounds them. The presence of these hollows contributes to the economy of the design. They act to lighten the anterior portion of the skull, reducing the overall heavy weight of the head, ensuring the supporting pillar of the neck is not strained. Each sinus is lined entirely by a membrane, maintaining an essential connection with the breath, allowing for pressure equilibrium in the dark. This system of interconnected, air-filled spaces adds resonance to the voice, tracing the bone's path inwardly. The frontal bone forms a significant portion of the cranial base. It contributes nearly all of the anterior cranial fossa, the shallowest and most interior of the three internal basins. This internal contour is critical, designed precisely to accommodate the large frontal lobes of the mind. The inner surface of the frontal bone acts as a supportive cradle, ensuring that the centers of thought are housed in perfect tranquility. The bone tissue here consists of layers of hard, dense compact bone, separated by the shock-absorbing sponge within. This layered matrix grants the frontal bone its protective role, resisting the world outside, while gently cradling the soft tissue within. The stability provided by this porcelain shield, articulated immovably with the other ancient plates, maintains the architectural integrity of the entire structure. We move from the forward arch to the great walls, the superior boundaries of the fortress, the parietal bones, the os parietal. The very word whispers of a wall, a side, a boundary. These two large, smooth plates of alabaster together form the great bulk of the vault, constituents of the high roof and the protective sides of the skull. They stand as rigid shields, guarding the delicate centers of the mind that rest in silence beneath them. The structure is a marvel of ancient engineering, meticulously layered for strength and for stillness. The exterior and interior are defined by thin plates of compact bone, substantia compacta. Heavy salts of calcium crystallize here, providing rock-like hardness to resist the weight of the world. Nestled safely between these porcelain layers is the internal cushion, the spongy bone, the Diploe. This central matrix acts as a buffer, a quiet absorber, taking the shock of the outside world and dissolving it, maintaining the internal tranquility of the cranial cavity. The strength of these walls relies on their connection, an immovable embrace. The bones articulate through specialized joints, the sutures, sutura, running across the crown of the head. Uniting right to left is the sagittal suture, sutura sagittalis, tracing the precise midline of the sanctuary. Anteriorly, the coronal suture, sutura coronalis, joins the wall to the forehead. Laterally, they meet the temples at the squamous suture, and posteriorly, they lock with the base of the skull at the lambdoid suture. These seams create an interlocking puzzle of bone, a unified, woven lattice, ensuring absolute continuity for the fortress. On the inner surface, facing the soft tissue of the brain, the bone is not empty. It is sculpted by delicate markings, the meningeal grooves, sulci arteriosi, quiet pathways left by the essential vessels, like rivers carved in stone, tracing the course of life. These vessels reside within the protective membrane, the dura mater, the tough mother, the outermost layer of protection, leaving its silent, permanent impression upon the alabaster matrix. Occasionally, there's a small passage, the parietal foramen, a subtle exit for the deep veins, connecting the inner reservoir to the outer world. The walls act as more than a shield. They record the hidden history of life, preserving the continuous, oxygenated tranquility of the mind. We travel now to the posterior foundation, the region where the cranial fortress makes its vital, final connection to the vertebral pillar. This singular, unpaired stone is the occipital bone, the os occipitale. It forms the heavy, dense back wall of the skull, withstanding the massive tensile forces exerted by the powerful neck muscles that attach to its rugged surface. The bone's matrix is hardened by ancient salts, giving it the necessary, uncompromising resistance required to protect the deep brain centers. Internal to this bone lies the deepest basin of the skull floor, the posterior cranial fossa. This profound depression provides the supportive, quiet platform upon which the cerebellum rests, in profound tranquility. The most defining feature of this stone is its central, monumental aperture, the foramen magnum, the great gateway. This large opening pierces the base of the skull, functioning as the passage between the fortress and the pillar. It is through this essential tunnel that the brainstem achieves continuity with the spinal cord. The surrounding bone tissue provides the ultimate, unyielding protection for the most critical pathway of life. Through this heavy aperture, past the spinal cord, the protective membranes, and the ascending lifelines, the vertebral arteries, supplying the brainstem in silence, flanking the great gateway laterally, are two prominent, smooth projections, the occipital condyles, paired, oval-shaped structures, often described as smooth rockers. They are specialized for articulation with the highest vertebra, the atlas. This intricate connection allows for the primary nodding motion of the head, the gentle gesture signifying yes. The porcelain-like surface of these condyles ensures this movement is achieved with absolute synovial silence. They bear the entire weight of the cranial fortress directly onto the supporting spine. Anterior to the gateway, the bone narrows significantly into the basilar part, the pars basilaris. This section projects forward to meet the sphenoid, forming the clivus, a gentle slope that serves as the protective seat, upon which the brainstem quietly rests. Hidden strategically, medial to each rocker, is the hypoglossal canal, a deep, protected tunnel designated for the passage of the nerve that controls the tongue. On the external surface, posteriorly, we find roughened lines and protuberances, crucial anchors for the powerful muscles of the neck, the external occipital protuberance, and the defining superior nuchal line. The structural complexity of this bone, with its great aperture, its smooth rockers for movement, and its heavy muscle anchors, fully completes the grounding base of the silent architecture. We now turn our collective focus to the complex, paired structures that anchor the lower sides of the cranium, the temporal bones, the os temporale, essential lateral sentinels, forming the side walls of the fortress. The bone is architecturally complex, segmented into distinct parts: the squamous part, the tympanic part, and the petrous part. Together, they manage sound, provide articulation for the jaw, and house the complex reservoir of equilibrium. The superior, flattened region is the squamous part. The term itself means scale-like. This thin, smooth plate forms the sidewall of the skull, overlapping the parietal bone like armor scales. The bone tissue here is layered, providing rigid external protection to the neural structures above. Extending forward from this scale is a narrow, elegant projection, the zygomatic process, an outward strut, providing stability to the midface region. This process arches forward to meet the cheekbone, completing the robust, alabaster framework known as the zygomatic arch, the defining prominence of the cheek, serving as a strong buttress against lateral forces. Immediately inferior to this strut lies the precise point of contact for the lower jaw, the mandibular fossa. This crucial depression is the articulating surface for the jaw joint, balancing strength with fluid motion. Posterior and inferior to the ear canal, the bone swells into a large, heavy prominence, the mastoid process, resembling a breast. The texture of this process is intentionally roughened, transforming it into a profound anchor for several of the neck's most powerful stabilizing muscles. Internally, the structure of the mastoid is riddled with small, quiet air cells, hidden beneath the heavy exterior, further contributing to the total architectural depth. Immediately anterior and medial to the mastoid, projecting downward from the base, is the delicate, needle-like extension known as the styloid process, far more slender than the mastoid, yet equally vital for anchoring soft structures. Just between these two processes lies a small opening, the stylomastoid foramen, allowing for the crucial exit of the facial nerve, carrying motor control to the face. The combination of the thin protective scale and the robust anchoring mass completes the lateral enclosure of the cranial fortress, ensuring both protection and the foundation for complex movement, maintaining overall structural tranquility. We deepen our study of the temporal bone, the os temporale, moving from the thin lateral plates to the most substantial, protected region of the cranial base. This internal volume is dominated by the petrous part, the pars petrosa. The name itself whispers of stone, a reflection of this bone's extraordinary density and uncompromising hardness. The petrous part is shaped internally like a rough, heavy stone pyramid or a mountain ridge. It forms a sturdy bony wedge, positioned firmly between the occipital and sphenoid bones, essential for the integrity of the cranial floor, viewed from within the fortress. This region defines a significant portion of the base. The anterior slope rests within the middle cranial fossa, providing a supportive shelf for the temporal lobes of the brain. The posterior slope contributes to the deep basin behind. This is perhaps the most dense and heavy mass of bone in the entire head, an absolute barrier. The matrix is concentrated with ancient salts, resisting penetration better than any other skeletal element. Its function is to shield. Deeply housed inside this impervious pyramid is the quiet sanctuary of the ear, the organs responsible for hearing and balance. The bone acts as a vault, shielding these soft structures from the shock of the world, maintaining perfect environmental tranquility. The inner ear contains the bony labyrinth, filled with ancient fluid, detecting sound waves and the pull of gravity. Despite its rock-like density, the petrous pyramid is pierced by vital apertures, essential passages for the body's lifelines. One such opening is the carotid canal, a spiraling, robustly protected passageway dedicated to the ascension of the internal carotid artery, a woven sheath of dense bone, ensuring the blood flow remains uninterrupted. Posterior to this canal lies the jugular foramen, a monumental exit site, providing passage for the large internal jugular vein, draining the blood from the fortress. It also facilitates the crucial transit of the cranial nerves, the vagus, the accessory, and the glossopharyngeal. Moving internally, we observe the internal acoustic meatus, a protected route to the inner ear, through which pass the nerves of hearing and balance, housed within this heavy alabaster pyramid, ensuring the continuity of sensory input. Projecting sharply downward from the base is the slender, sharp styloid process, a needle of bone, extremely delicate compared to the heavy mastoid nearby. It stands like a fragile, quiet pillar, anchoring the soft tissues of the throat and tongue. Just posterior to this needle lies the small but indispensable stylomastoid foramen, the final exit point for the facial nerve. passing through this precise junction to control the expression. Thus, the temporal bone acts as a complex integration point, marrying rock-like protection with the necessity of safe passage, maintaining the absolute tranquility required for the delicate operations of life. We penetrate now to the geographical center of the entire cranial fortress. Here, deeply hidden beneath the expansive plates of the skull, lies the single, unpaired stone, the sphenoid bone, the os sphenoidale. Its position is architecturally unique, articulating with nearly every other bone of the fortress, securing the front to the back and the sides to the base. This complexity earns it the designation of the Keystone. The bone tissue is extremely dense and intricate, a critical anchor within the bony matrix. The shape of this bone is most frequently visualized as a great bat, with wings extended in the dark. The central mass is the body, the corpus sphenoidale. This heavy segment houses both air-filled spaces and the control center for the entire endocrine system. Within this central body, we find the sphenoidal sinuses, silent air caves, lined with delicate membrane, contributing silently to the economy of the design, lightening the heavy skeleton, a necessary compromise between mass and mobility. Superior to the body, we find the deeply significant feature known as the Turkish saddle, the sella turcica, a formation projecting upward from the alabaster mass, resembling a small, sculpted throne. The deepest depression of this saddle is the hypophyseal fossa, a quiet seat, holding and protecting the pituitary gland. The master gland, the dense matrix of the surrounding bone, offers this delicate structure absolute, unwavering protection, ensuring its continuous tranquility. Extending laterally from the central body are the two massive, curved projections known as the greater wings, the ali majores. These wings spread outward, defining broad sections of the cranial interior and exterior. Internally, they form defining portions of the middle cranial fossa, a protective bed for the temporal lobes of the brain.